Hi, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. We are going to give everybody about a minute to join us, and then we will go ahead and get started. Okay, everybody. Well, good evening. My name is Elena Carroll, and I work at Upswing. And we are so excited to have everyone here this evening for our webinar, which is for our students this evening on coping with anxious thoughts. So really excited to have everyone here tonight, as well as some guest speakers that will be talking to you in just a little bit. Okay, so a few reminders for tonight's webinar before we get started. So first of all, this webinar will be recorded. We'd like to remind you that if you have any questions, to please post them in the Q&A. We will get to them at the end of the presentation, and we'll try to address as many as we can this evening. We want to assure you that your questions are anonymous, as we will be talking about some sensitive topics tonight. We want to make sure that everybody is comfortable asking questions. We're also very shortly going to disable the chat for our attendees, again, to just make sure that there aren't any interruptions during the webinar. I do want to remind everybody, we're all friends here, but please make sure that we are respectful of others during the webinar. We want to make sure that this is a wonderful experience for everyone, and we're all here to learn and grow together. All right, so I'd like to introduce our speaker this evening. Her name is Chloe Shaffer. So Chloe is actually a licensed professional counselor in Illinois and a licensed mental health counselor associate in Indiana. Chloe obtained a master's in clinical mental health counseling from Bradley University. Additionally, she holds a credential as a national certified counselor. She's passionate about working with anxiety or personality disorders and helping those with chronic pain. Chloe provides interventions from therapies to best match client needs such as CBT, ACT, solutions-focused, mindfulness, brain-based, and faith-based interventions. Chloe actually works for Upswing's mental health provider and partner, BetterMynd, and she's been working there since 2022. So super excited to have Chloe here with us tonight, sharing her expertise and being on hand to answer your questions about stress and anxiety and mental health support. So I'm going to stop sharing right now, and I am going to actually hand it over to Chloe. So go ahead, Chloe. I'll let you bring up your screen and get started.
There we go. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Chloe Shaffer, and I am super excited to talk to you about how to cope with all of those anxious thoughts or the stress that you might be dealing with. Just a little rundown over some of the things we're going to talk about tonight is the use of assessments, what stress versus anxiety looks like, different anxiety terms, coping exercises, and therapy exercises. And to get that started with assessments, this is one of the easiest ways to jumpstart your progress, whether it's individual, like you're searching this on your own, or you're working with a professional counselor. But the goal is to learn your anxiety hotspots, or better known as triggers, And by doing this, you can tailor your therapy by matching those triggers to different therapy models. And I'll share some examples of that later too. But again, you can kind of take some inventories online, like the BECK assessment that you can pay for online, or again, just working with another therapist to actually have some clinical models to assess you. And also moving forward in a couple slides, we will talk about some of those different triggers, and you can kind of identify yourself with different triggers and distortions that way too to help your journey. And a really big misconception that people have is that their stress is actually anxiety or vice versa. So to kind of break down these barriers, I created this little spreadsheet here to break down those, what stress is, what anxiety is, and the similarities. So the big indicator of stress versus anxiety is what causes it. With stress, stress is caused by external triggers only. So this would be indicators like a work situation, money problems, relationship issues, big life events, and also grieving or loss. So again, stress is external, meaning things that happen outside of your control, or maybe things outside of your own thought process. And stress is usually occasional or short term, meaning that these things don't happen for years and years on years. But again, more situational based too. On the flip side, with anxiety, these feelings and symptoms are caused regardless of the external triggers. So these things are internal, they can be persistent. So these constant thoughts and not just situational. And their indicators are different personality traits, negative thinking patterns, learned behaviors, and also genetics can play a role in this too. So again, the big difference is stress is caused by external factors and anxiety happens regardless of its presence. Now, anxiety definitely can amplify when stress is high, different events that are happening. So I'm not to debunk that. Anxiety definitely can happen with stress, and we see that a lot. Some of the similarities that they share would be muscle pain. So usually when we're stressed out or anxious, we kind of tense up. It also can cause some different digestive issues like IBS or nausea. In extreme situations, anxiety could cause some ulcers. Trouble sleeping, this is common for both again, whether you're having issues kind of reeling those thoughts and you can't fall asleep or you can't stay asleep. And also, what we all love is crankiness. So we definitely can become a little bit more short-tempered with both of these. And now moving on to some anxiety terms. These are also called anxiety distortions, but these help you identify maybe a little bit more of what's going on with those anxious thoughts, okay? So by knowing these, again, you can kind of tailor what you do about it, how you treat that problem. So just listing some of these off real quick. This first slide breaks down some of these, and I have two other slides as well. And in no way, shape, or form is this used for diagnosing individuals, but it does help to kind of track those different thought patterns that aren't very helpful for us, okay? So this first one is magnification and minimization. So this is when you exaggerate or minimize the importance of events. So maybe you believe that your own achievements are unimportant or that your mistakes are excessively important. So kind of just like that little magnification glass, that magnification system of it's either blown up or very, very small. So how you're thinking about different events. Next is catastrophizing, and this one is very common. This is when you see only the worst possible outcome of a situation. So you're going to that worst place, worst case scenario when you're thinking about future events. Next, we have overgeneralization, and this is when you make broad interpretations from a single or a few events. And the textbook example would be, I felt awkward during my job interview. I'm always so awkward. So again, just kind of lumping these things in, just broad interpretations. And now we have magical thinking. This is the belief that acts will influence unrelated situations. So maybe I'm a good person, bad things shouldn't happen to me. Again, not a common one here, but it definitely does happen in individuals. And then personalization, very similar to magical thinking, but with a different control. So this is when you believe that you are responsible for events outside of your control. So my mom is always upset. She would be fine if I did more to help her. Okay. And again, the goal of these things to identify is to see if these are the types of negative thought patterns you have. And they can vary. You can have multiple, or you could just have a couple of them. And on our next anxiety term slide, we have jumping to conclusions. This one's a very common one for us, with or without anxiety. But this is when we interpret the meaning of a situation with little or no evidence. And overall, this is a big factor on some of these as well. Next, we have mind reading. This is not the taboo version, but basically you are interpreting the thoughts and beliefs of others without adequate evidence. So, you're in a room with someone and you think, oh, they're not going to go on a date with me. They probably think I'm ugly. So again, we don't know that. So that's why it seems like it's mind reading. Fortune telling, the expectation that a situation will turn out badly, again, without the evidence. So we don't know these things, but it's just that negative thought pattern that's kind of automatic. Emotional reasoning. This is that the assumption your emotions reflect the way things really are. So if I feel like a bad friend, I must be a bad friend. Very similar to personalization as well. And last but not least, for the anxiety terms, I left the best for last, the most common ones. This would be disqualifying the positive, and this is when you recognize only the negative aspects of a situation and ignore the positive. And the best way I can describe this is maybe you get like a 99% back on a paper or an exam, and you are just hung up on that 1%, that one little critique, and you just disqualify all of the other awesome things that you did and achieved. Next is should statements. And another big factor with anxiety is how you communicate with yourself internally. So the language is a huge part of changing these negative thoughts too. So these should statements is the belief that things should become a certain way or be a certain way. So I should always be friendly. I should always do this. I shouldn't do that, etc. And that's pretty common with perfectionism as well too. And last but not least, we have all or nothing thinking. And this is when we think in absolutes, such as always, never, or every. So I never do a good enough job on anything. Again, language is very important with how you talk to yourself, not just how you talk to others, but definitely what is coming from the internal base as well. So again, with all of these anxiety terms or distortions, it's important to just kind of track what types of distortions you might have. Again, because on assessments, you can definitely fast track your progress if you and your therapist or both know that this is what's going on, and we can kind of fix it and mediate that as soon as we can. And regardless if you are just dealing with stress or if you are dealing with anxiety, lifestyle really is key for everything. We know that nutrition definitely plays a factor with our hormones that controls everything in our brains, especially water. You'd be surprised what just like an extra glass of water will do for you and your body. Exercise, of course, that's a good de-stressor, but also just being able to kind of stay healthy and in that mindset as well. And substance-free, the controversial topic here with all of my clients would be caffeine does count as substances. Obviously, in moderation, it is fine. But definitely watching those energy drinks or at what time you're having your Starbucks in the day. So those things can impact your mental health and your sleeping patterns too. And moving on into our exercises round, there are several different types of exercises that you can do very easily and quickly by yourself or even through YouTube. And the first one is a grounding exercise. And the whole goal of a grounding exercise is to distract those stressful or anxious thoughts that you are having and be able to give your body the chance to kind of recoup and increase your oxygen, decrease your blood pressure and your heart rate. So distract it, and while you're doing these exercises, your body is able to recuperate again. And that way, moving forward, you have a better success rate of handling a situation or just not being in that stressful environment within yourself very long. So this first one is called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. This is one that is used immensely through Hollywood, like all of the movies and TV shows that I've seen. Like this is the one thing that they come back with after, oh, I went to therapy or whatever. So this essentially is breaking down your senses and taking in your surroundings. So the first one is, what are 5 things you can see? And this is when you look for small details, not just, oh, I see a wall. Okay, so looking for small details, trying to pick up extra patterns, the way the light's reflecting on a window, or something that maybe you've never noticed before. Then you move on to, what are 4 things you can feel? Noticing the sensation of your clothing or the sun, wind on your skin. And also, if you have like a pro level at this, you can intentionally do these steps here too. Maybe pick up something sensory that you enjoy, picking up an object, examining its weight, how it feels, maybe what the temperature of some items are. And then what are 3 things you can hear? So paying attention to the sounds in your mind that your mind has tuned out. So, in my room right now, I've got my air purifier going on. I can kind of hear some static in my headphones, and then there's music playing in the other room on the TV. So again, just picking up on all of these little senses. And then what are 2 things you can smell? So again, maybe you don't have all of these things easily accessible or pleasantly accessible. But in an ideal situation, you will be able to pick up, what is the general smell in here? Do I smell an air freshener? Can I smell my laundry soap on my dress? And then again, moving forward to one thing you can taste. If you are a pro at this or intentionally doing this, maybe you already carry gum or like hard candies or something, or just have like a water bottle next to you or anything to taste something. So this one is very easy, whether you just look at it or you have memorized these things, but practice definitely makes permanent, and you'll be more likely to use it if you practice these exercises. That way, when you are stressed out or needing to escape from something mentally, you're more likely to go ahead and do this and it work. And next, we have this large chunk here, which would be all of these different types of breathing exercises. And what we're going to do is, after all of this is sent to you, probably tomorrow, we're going to copy these links. That way you can actually access them outside of this webinar here. But these are all different YouTube videos. These are just examples of them. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of certain ones of these. But breaking it down, first we have progressive muscle relaxation, also called PMR. And this walks you through different large muscle groups of your body. And what you do is you tense each of those muscles. So maybe you start with your right fist, okay? So the whole purpose is to inhale as you're tightening and you squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. You hold it as well as your breath, and then you exhale and release at the same time. And you do that maybe 1 or 2 times of each of those large muscle groups, working your way through the whole body. It really, really relaxes you, and it helps your nervous system to release that tension as well. This is something that I love for anxious clients and also clients with chronic pain. Just a really good way to release as much physical tension you possibly have. And then next we have boxed breathing. This is also called square breathing. It's also called four square breathing. So essentially we have a box, okay? And the whole concept of this is breathing around the square of a box. So the first chunk, the first side, is when you inhale for 4 counts. Going along the outside, you hold it for 4 counts, you exhale for 4 counts, and then you hold it again. So you're breathing in, holding, exhaling, holding. 4 counts on each side of those boxes. And I like this video in particular because I'm a very visual person when I'm doing these exercises, and it helps you track it so you don't have to count yourself. But eventually, again, practice makes permanent. You will be able to kind of follow that along anywhere you have like a box, a square, a rectangle, anywhere. So the best one is definitely using your phone, I think, because we always have our phones, right? So even if you can't pull up a video in a conversation or something, still just internally kind of track that and trace that with your breathing. Another pro level breathing would be the exercise 4, 7, 8. And it's numbered that way because that is how the counts work with your breath. 4 is how long you inhale. So not very long. You inhale for 4, you hold it for 7, and you exhale with 8. And some of my clients have really enjoyed this after they've gotten used to breath work. But definitely because it gives them more control as well. So that control, as well as all the nervous system benefits and health benefits you're getting from deep breathing. But again, control is a big factor with some people's anxiety too. And last but not least, we have guided imagery meditation. So usually when you think of meditation, you're thinking of, the yoga Om pose where you're just kind of blank-minded. And a lot of times that doesn't work for people with anxiety straight off the bat, because when we're just sitting there and quiet, that's when our thoughts really start to go, right? So with it being guided, it is basically videos or prompts that are talking you through situations. It can be very peaceful environments like a walk through the forest, like this one. This is my favorite video. Kind of walking at a beach, mountains, different like waterfalls, all of these different things tailored to what you like. You can just search it, guided imagery blank on YouTube or Google anywhere. So again, this one's a very good one. It usually is a little bit longer than some regular breathing exercises, usually about 8 to 15 minutes would be like the standard guided imagery, but very good to help you relax, but also kind of process some things as well. So how you're feeling, maybe some of those uncomfortable situations that you can avoid and get out of too. And moving on to our therapies chunk, these are different concepts that you and or your therapist can use. Obviously, the therapy is meant for therapy sessions and therapists, but there are some pretty comprehensive worksheets that I'm going to share that are very easy for you to do, that are self-instructed as well. So the main concept of these next couple slides is CBT based. So these are going to be some CBT worksheets or models. But what CBT does is helps you problem solve. So it helps identifying the relationship between your beliefs, your thoughts, feelings, and the big thing is what you do about it. So those behaviors that follow. And this is one of my favorites here. This concept is challenging irrational thoughts. So this is when you basically put your thoughts on trial. You're either gathering evidence to support the facts, or more often than not, you're going to debunk and talk yourself out of that thought. And how we do this is very simple. You can either think about these things, write it down, or of course, talk to your therapist about these, working through them, sorry. So this first question to ask yourself is my thought based on facts or feelings? Again, more often than not, it's going to be those feelings, those assumptions. How would my best friend see this situation? How likely is it that my fear will come true? But more importantly, what is most likely to happen? So let's rationalize what is most likely to happen despite those fears and those feelings. And lastly, if my fear does come true, will it matter in a week, a month, or a year? And again, the whole purpose of this is to challenge those negative thought patterns that we're having because they are pretty consistent. So again, with all of those distortions, those terms we talked about, if you're kind of stuck in a rut with one of those, you have to challenge yourself, and challenge why you're thinking those things and keep debunking those thoughts. And like I said in the beginning, By knowing those different distortions that you have, you can just jumpstart your therapy. And one of those is catastrophizing. One of those terms was catastrophizing. And just like this, we have a therapy that is meant just for catastrophizing called decatastrophizing. And the questions are very similar to the irrational thoughts that we just covered, but with different wording for different situations. So with catastrophizing, if you can remember, that is when we think of the worst possible outcome of a situation. So those doomsday type thoughts that we have of, maybe my car broke down, so now I'm going to get fired. So that would be a good example of catastrophizing. So how we break this one down is, what are you worried about? So listing that out. Sometimes you might have a million things going through your head. So it may be a little difficult to list just one thing. But for this sake, list one thing that you are worried about. How likely is it to happen? What is the worst that could happen? What is most likely to happen? And again, what are the chances you'll be okay in a week, a month, and then a year? So the biggest factor with this is, unfortunately, with anxiety, we like to avoid. We like to avoid these worst possible outcomes, like if they actually did occur. But it is really important to confront that thought. And I will talk a little bit about that later too. And last, with the therapies, this is not a CBT concept. It is a therapy on its own called exposure therapy. And this would be used to treat different phobias. So, if you've ever heard of, the fear of snakes or claustrophobia, these are definitely ones that are very niche areas, niche phobias. But also, social anxiety is actually a phobia. So this is a good way for some therapists to kind of challenge you on that as well. There's also something called agoraphobia, and that is basically like the fear of leaving your home without like a very point person that you've identified as safe to leave the house with. And how I've worked with this in the past is using very small but specific goals, and that is what exposure therapy does. And again, with any of these links, they will send them out when they send the copy of this. But this link basically just kind of works through little things that you could do to kind of open yourself up a little bit more if you have an attainable phobia that you're not already seeking therapy for. But basically just starting with very small and specific goals. If you've ever heard of SMART goals, the acronym for SMART, very similar to that. And like the picture shows, you're just kind of starting by dipping your toes in before diving all head first. So starting small and starting specific with very baby steps. And the biggest challenge I have for everyone is asking yourself, what if it does happen? What if those fears happen? What if that negative thought does happen? Again, I know we don't like to address these issues, but we definitely will keep reeling them and looping them in our head. But instead of letting it consume you, it's really important to attack it head on. So coming up with that plan A or plan B, like in those different models, what is most likely to happen? What's the worst that could happen? So working through those will definitely take those anxious thoughts and its power away, so that you are able to address, if this does happen, here's a couple options. And I now know how to cope with it too. So I know that I can reach out to someone as a therapist. I can reach out to my family member. I can do these exercises to help calm me down as well. So what if it does happen? Okay. And we're going to go ahead and answer some of the questions that we've had in the chat as well.
All right. So, Chloe, could you tell us a little bit about who the different types of mental health professionals are that might help people who haven't found other methods of coping?
Okay. Yes. So kind of like the first method of attack would definitely to start out by getting an assessment through someone. Obviously, we have BetterMynd. There's community mental health centers. And what they do is the line of different professionals. There's some assessment clinicians that typically have like a master's degree. Maybe they don't do therapy in particular, but they are qualified to assess you, see what you need, and then link you to other resources. Then we have social workers and counselors. They are very, very similar. We both provide therapy, but basically our educational backgrounds and the scope of practice are a little bit different. But in terms of therapy in general, you would be able to get them from either or. And then, of course, you have a psychologist who can provide therapy as well. Of course, they have more expertise with their background in a doctorate. And we also have a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist can do therapy, but as well as prescribing medication too. So that's usually if things are maybe not easily treated with therapy right off the bat, or things are a little bit more extreme starting off, a psychiatrist can definitely help with that too.
Thanks, Chloe. I'll actually field this next one. How does BetterMynd work? And so BetterMynd partners with colleges, and we are, as Elena had shared, we are the service provider for Upswing campuses who have mental health services combined with Upswing. And so for campuses that are connected with BetterMynd, most often the college counseling center will assign credits to students to use for sessions to meet with counselors like Chloe, who are based in the state that the student is in. So that's kind of the short of it. It's basically a service that your college campus is providing you. So I'll go to the next one. How can mood disorders affect feelings of anxiety? I think should be.
Yeah, so different mood disorders or personality disorders, they definitely impact those different thoughts and distortions, right? Maybe in a little bit more, has more of an effect than just basic generalized anxiety. Um, so again, with mood disorders or personality disorders, I like to think of it as maybe a little bit more kind of like hardwired in your system. It's not impossible to overcome, but a little bit stronger than just generalized anxiety as well.
So we might need a minute to answer this one, but how can I find out if my campus has BetterMynd? We do partner with Upswing. I think that there is actually a place, there's a module for it on the Upswing platform that would show this, but it looks like Elena's ready to respond. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to kind of start off by saying that actually our partnership with BetterMynd is a new one. And I know that our team has been reaching out to all of our partner campuses to try to find out if they would be interested in learning more about BetterMynd. So I would just highly suggest, given that I'm assuming you're a student at your campus, to just reach out to your campus counseling center first and foremost, as they may have resources available right on campus for you that, of course, and hopefully that you don't have to pay for in any way. And of course, as we, continue to spread the word about BetterMynd and the services that we're able to provide, hopefully we'll be able to provide BetterMynd to your school. So I would definitely start with your local and on-campus counseling center first, and find out what resources are available there, because they'll definitely be able to tell you.
Chloe, I'm going to generalize one of the questions that came in. For folks who have been in therapy and on medication, but still feel the experience of anxiety, do you have any recommendations for what they might pursue next?
Absolutely. So of course, therapy and treatment is not just like an automatic fix for all of these things that we've gone through. So again, if you go back to that slide where I talked about lifestyle, lifestyle is very important too. So maybe focusing on increasing nutrition, increasing exercise, and also, substances of any kind that impacts things. I've had a lot of clients benefit from different hormonal investigations, women especially, that plays a huge factor in anxiety too. But I'd say when in doubt, try some of these exercises. Even individuals who are just dealing with some mild stress really benefit from trying some of these breathing exercises, because it tricks your nervous system into thinking, yeah, everything's peachy keen, everything's good right now. So try the combination of all of those, and eventually you'll start to see some improvement too.
And also, keep in mind that we're going to experience, just as humans, a normal range of emotions. So you should be feeling all of these things. It's the extremes in the place where it gets dysfunctional, obviously, that is really the challenge, I know, for people. So thank you for that, Chloe. See something. So for folks who are at a college that's partnering with BetterMynd, I would recommend checking in with the college counseling center. If there's not a college counseling center, checking in with the dean of students office. That's usually kind of the next logical place that will manage the relationship for these services. So for students who are seeking information about how do I get access to credits, that type of thing, you would find out from one of those two departments on campus. Chloe, what about time management when you have a ton of responsibilities in multiple domains in your life? So this example is, how can I really manage my time as a mom of 3 kids, running the home and combining it with school without breaking down?
So as silly as it may sound, being able to intentionally take a moment for yourself, whether it is forcing yourself to get up a few minutes early to have that cup of coffee and just to breathe before everybody starts waking up and crying, before you have to work and do school. So definitely setting those intentional times, whether it's first thing in the morning or when you're going to bed, I think that helps to kind of just jumpstart that process. Obviously, keeping a schedule as best as you can. But what I've noticed is a lot of people try to overdo the schedule all at once. Again, the all or nothing type thought. And then you burn out. Okay. So whenever you are over scheduling yourself, or I want to deep clean this whole house today, you're going to burn out and maybe not want to clean for the next couple days or several days or whatever the situation is. Similar with homework too. So if you kind of force yourself to do everything all at once, it's going to crumble, and it's going to be harder than just breaking it down into 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there.
Thank you. How could we help others going through an anxiety attack when breathing exercises fail to work?
So that is a good one. I've seen this a couple times before I was a counselor, of course. But I think the best way for someone who's maybe not trained in what to say is to simply just be there. These people are usually scared. We think that we're dying because we can't breathe well enough. But simply being there, if you don't know positive things to say, just kind of being there is important too. If you can, if you have access to water, sometimes like a cold rag on the back of the neck can help kind of bring some of these like the extremes down as well. But definitely cold. I've noticed that a lot of people benefit from something cold touching them as well.
Yeah, and just to add to that a little bit, the whole idea of getting somebody back into their body, because they've really detached from their body when they enter into a panic attack. So to Chloe's point, having that cold contact, it's a little shock to the system and really put somebody back into feeling a sensation in their body. So anything you can do to help somebody zero in on the body a little bit better works really well. I understand that we should try to change our lifestyle, like using diet and exercise, but what do you do if you feel so much anxiety or stress that you feel like doing nothing?
So I would say, especially even for people with depression too, if you're already laying in bed, we can definitely pull up those breathing exercises, positive affirmations as well to kind of get you up and get you going. Some other things are finding what does comfort you. So do you feel better when you put your makeup on or do your hair or just simply take a shower and have self-care? Do you feel better when you have that, that Diet Coke or whatever in moderation, of course. But doing little intentional things that you do know you enjoy to set yourself up. And also something that's a little peculiar. I kind of recommend people putting their shoes on because usually when we put our shoes on, it's that automatic connection we make with we're about to go and do something or we have plans. So if you just kind of put your shoes on or keep your shoes on after a long day, you might be more likely to get up and do those dishes or to be able to cook dinner or something like that too.
They're great questions coming in. And actually, I just saw a really helpful comment that someone else shared. So it says, for me, setting a time limit to use my phone has been very helpful and has helped me a lot getting a better sleep. So I thought that was great. Okay, so how do we learn how to trust ourselves and develop confidence and not be led by anxious thoughts is the absolute truth?
Mm. So those self-doubts are definitely a thing for all of us too. But basically, if you think back to kind of debunking those thoughts, that's a great way to start there. So if you're having thoughts, let's just say about school, I'm not doing super well, or I feel like I could be doing better. Well, let's state some of the facts, going through what the facts are. Same thing with relationships and other thoughts that you're having about yourself is how do I know? How do I know that this is what's going on? Is there any proof that this is happening? And again, more often than not, talk yourself out of it, that you are unfortunately just stuck in that thought pattern, kind of yelling at yourself internally too. We also call that thought stopping. There's some different fun videos on how to thought stop, where essentially you're telling yourself to kind of reboot that thought and nip it in the bud because you know that that's not helpful.
Yeah. How can I support myself when facing procrastination and experiencing a freeze response when confronted with a substantial workload that triggers panic attacks?
So good one. Kind of similar to the other commenters about time management. Obviously in the here and now, if you're already stressed and behind on work, definitely leaning into those coping skills or things to kind of motivate you forward. Some silly things you could do is like, okay, well, after I do start this, for 30 minutes, I'll be able to play that game of Candy Crush on my phone or watch an episode on Netflix. So being able to motivate yourself is a key there too. But I think building up to that is setting that helpful, healthy schedule instead of just letting it pile up. So whenever you definitely are kind of stuck in that freeze zone, that procrastination, the second you can pull yourself out of it, maybe even watch a motivational video while you're stuck in those thoughts, because we definitely like to keep scrolling on Facebook Reels or Instagram. So if you're already on your phone, maybe just kind of set yourself up for success with some type of distraction that'll motivate you as well.
Chloe, there was a question about when someone is experiencing the somatic symptoms related to anxiety or a panic attack, and they have a history of maybe misreading those symptoms as being strictly physiological in nature, and then later learn that it was a panic attack. How might they go about better assessing for themselves what they're experiencing?
So that one is a good one. Of course, if things are extreme or they're lasting longer than maybe 10 minutes, that's when you're probably going to wonder, like, is this an actual panic attack, or is there something going on inside? The best way to do that, again, breathing exercises are important. Honestly, sometimes just even telling somebody like, hey, I'm having some heart flutters, or I can't catch my breath right now. Sometimes just letting someone know also helps. But the key difference again is time. The amount of time it takes for a panic attack is very short, compared to, let's say you are having something internal happening. So being able to check that out, rule out the somatic symptoms by calming yourself down, removing yourself from a situation, that's important too. If you still continue to feel that, then I would definitely check it out, especially if it's something long term. But there are also some panic attack videos that you can watch during a panic attack. Clearly, if you identify with how you're feeling in that moment, that's a pretty good indicator that's what you're dealing with as well. But I would say, if you're already aware of the symptoms you're having, maybe list those down and remind yourself, like, okay, I've been here before. This is what that felt like. Or is there anything new happening as well? So I hope that answers that right for you guys.
So there are a lot of specific examples in here about either how to cope or deal with stuff like panic attack, anxiety, relative to specific symptoms. And so there's one question about, is it normal to feel a certain physiological symptom? And then there are other ones that say things like, I do all these things, but still really struggle with just the basics of getting out of bed. And so I just thought I would make a note that there is, normal is a huge range in terms of experiences. And so within range are a lot of these different physiological experiences that people will have related to how they're manifesting anxiety. And then in terms of dealing with some of the symptoms of anxiety, like struggling to get up to begin the day, I think there are a lot of different things that Chloe has shared that that folks can use for themselves and try to employ or work with a professional at finding new options for them, because a lot of these will be tailored kind of individually. But I think, you know, one of the keys in all of this is being able to stay connected to your body to keep yourself grounded through, you know, some of the methods that Chloe had identified. And then on top of that, really this experience of being able to share with someone that you trust, including a therapist as appropriate, what your experience is. When you internalize all of that and there's no place for it to go, a lot of times we end up experiencing it with these bodily symptoms. So please keep that in mind. And I'm sorry we're not getting to every question because there are quite a number of them. I'm going to do everything I can to type answers, and maybe Chloe can jump on in a few and do that as well. But I really want to thank people for their engagement and their thoughtful questions.
Yeah, wonderful. And thank you so much for Chloe, as well as Kate, joining us here this evening. We really appreciate your time and your advice this evening. So I wanted to end just by reminding everybody that we will send out the recording as well as the links to the resources that Chloe shared. We'll try to get that out to you all tomorrow. So please keep an eye on your email. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at support@upswing.io. We'll try to stick around here maybe for a few more minutes to try to address some of the questions that are in the chat. We'll type those answers in. But thank you all for joining us. I hope that you all got out a lot from this session. I know I learned some things, so really appreciate everybody's time and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was my pleasure joining. I hope this was helpful for you guys in any type of way.